The number one reason why most people are broke is because they're trying to be right. They're not trying to be rich. When you're in business, when you want to do something, we think something works. And how many of you have, experienced, oh, I already know this syndrome? Someone tells you something, yeah, but John, I already know it, right? Well, if you know it, but you don't do it, you don't know it. And unfortunately, what happens, it starts to feed ego. And the market really doesn't care about your opinion. It doesn't really care about the logic or your excuses. What it cares about is what works. And what works today is not what works tomorrow. Do you know how many meetings I've been in where I'll know what's happening? Because one question you always have to ask is, what do you know to be true that other people don't yet? And when you're able to understand and articulate that process, then you go, well, doing this moves me forward, not doing it moves me backwards. And it's always arguing. It's not about being right. For example, let's say you want to do something in business and you're arguing, it will work because of this, it won't work because of it. Well, test it. By the time you've, argued about it and you've tested it, then you know what actually works versus what doesn't work, right? So the first thing is really getting rid of ego. If you want to get rich, you have to get rid of that ego. And this happens I hang around a lot of billionaires. And they're always asking me questions. I'm like, why are you asking me questions? Like, you're the billionaire. And so it's always about learning new things and then implementing new things and then seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work. And every time I've thought sometimes, oh, this is going to work, it's not going to work, I just try it. Because when I try it, okay, it might fail, right? It might not work, but who cares? What matters is that I've tried it, I've tested it, and then I'm not arguing back and forward what works. And I've seen so many people, they're arguing with each other all the time. And then by the time they finish the argument, they could have just tried it and tested it, and then that would have got them more results in their life. So we've always got to make sure that if you want to make money, you want to create wealth in your life, we must be open, right? We can't have this closed mindset. Often I see too many people closing off the mindset and they'll say, oh, it doesn't work. Right? How many times did someone come to you before and they told you about this thing called Bitcoin? And then straight away, oh, it's a scam. Oh, it doesn't work. So we've got to always pay attention to what are we trying to make excuses for versus what are we actually trying to do? And is it going to move us further or getting us closer to what we want to do? Okay, that's the first one. The second thing is most people would rather win arguments than win financially. And again, I've been in so many meetings where I'll speak to somebody and they'll say, no, it doesn't work. And they'll use some kind of justification for it. And yes, sometimes those justifications are valid. But if I see that what people are doing and you test it, you could do something exactly the same, change one thing, and then it'll work, all right? So that's why they stay stuck, because they're not willing to proceed. They're not willing to move forward. And if you look at where you are right now in your business, in your life, everything starts with a change, right? And that change happens because you're doing something different, right? And that decision to kind of stay and do one thing versus doing things over and over and over again and iterating and seeing what works and what doesn't work, for me, makes a massive impact. I'll give you an example. So when I first started in real estate, I realized that, knocking on people's doors doesn't really work as effective as if I was to have people come to me. Right? And I was arguing with my friend and they said, oh yeah, but people don't go on the internet. For example, our age group back then was people in their 40s to 50s. And back then, all my friends would say, oh yeah, but these people don't use social media. They're not on Facebook. That was a blanket statement. They're not using Facebook. It's funny now because when you tell people you're on Facebook, people think you're old, right? The point here is that whenever we are doing something, we have to understand the metrics and tweaking the process and to be able to pivot. If you want to get rich, then you must pivot. If you want to unlock that income, then you need to unlock yourself. And this is one thing that I think is really, really important. Every time you choose to be right, you delay results, right? Rich people change their mind really, really fast. You see, what poor people do is they defend bad decisions. And if you're a CEO of a company and if you're an entrepreneur, you'll relate to this. We'll make a decision as CEOs and then in our mind, we've gone through all the pros and cons and then in a split second, we'll change our mind. And our team go, hold on a second. You just told me this and now you're telling me the complete opposite. Like, what's happening? And it can be frustrating. And there's been times where other team members get so upset that, they're doing one thing and you change it and then you do another thing. That's because we want to own those decisions, right? Is it a good decision? Is it a bad decision? Do I want to suggest to my team, my business partners that, hey, are we going to go this way? And actually in my mind, it's a really bad idea because, I didn't think about this, I didn't think about that. But if I go back now and I try and change it, I'll look incompetent. I'll look like I don't know what I'm talking about. When in actual fact, your experience and your wisdom kicks in and there's something that you may have never thought of. And that's why you have to own that result. And so many times I've seen a lot of people get into that position where they go, well, if I'm going to do it this way, then it's definitely going to work. And they'll try and make the wrong right. When in actual fact, at that point, you need to say, you know what? The thing that I suggested is completely wrong. I'm going to change it to this and here's why, right? It's much better to do that because getting to understand what works, what doesn't work. Again, we're talking about being broke. Broke mindset is we were staying in one place all the time. Rich mindset is the agility to pivot fast and move quick. And isn't that true with every business? If you stay in one business for too long, right? The cycles change every 10 years, right? It's not about doing one thing one time and doing one thing another time. It's about understanding how we're able to implement the thing that actually works. And again, I see too many people, they'd rather stay comfortable. They'd rather not do anything than do something with a chance of producing a result. If you don't do anything, you have zero chance. But if you do something, you have a much higher chance. And I think this is where we've always got to pay attention to testing and measuring, trials and tribulations, understanding if I do this, I'll get more results. If I do this, I won't get any result. And it's these three things that constantly allow you to create more choices, which then get you more success, which then leads to you being rich rather than being broke. Broke mindset, I stayed the same. Rich mindset is a growth mindset. Do you know how many times, I'll tell you another thing as well. How many times people say to me, why are you going to that seminar? Why are you reading that book? Because my friend says to me, but if you go to that one, it's always the same thing. Yeah, it's the same thing, but it's the same thing in a different perspective. Because how I was a year ago to how I am now, I've evolved, right? So it's kind of like when you watch a film for the second time, you see a different part of what that film is than you never saw before, because now you are focused. Now you are understanding. Now you can see the woods through the trees. And every time I focus on creating a lot of our successes, it comes down to a decision I've made, but I've changed last minute. And by the way, I'm gonna hold my hands up and say, is it always the right choice? No. Sometimes I'll change it last minute and it flops. But I can tell you more times, right, it's always been for the better. And coming up with things with the last minute or being too prepared. And this is gonna sound controversial. If you're too prepared with something, is that gonna allow you to create more? The answer is no. Because what happens is when you're prepared, you're limiting. So you need to leave an area of spontaneity, and I call this organized chaos, or something that is strategically random. When something's strategically random, you create more success, and that's what allows you to grow and scale. And I tell you, every time I've focused on this, it's created something magical. Because things happen for a reason. We do things, and I know it sounds like a little bit of a rant, but too many times I've seen people, yeah, John, I got to get my business plan all set, right? And they go to execute it, and years on, it never ends up being anything like what they set out. You know what I'm talking about, right? So that's why you've always got to pay attention to the nuances of how a process works in order to grow it, in order to scale it, in order to achieve more with it. Whether you're working in a job or you're working in a business or you're doing something, but understand that it comes down to the process at which we iterate. That's the big key there. Iteration. Again, if you're in a job and you want to be better, iterate more, right? What more can you do? Be more proactive. When you're more proactive and you do things, it tells you a lot. And that's why I want you to always focus on creating the know-how, focus on doing things that are different, but also focusing on processes that always allow you to achieve more. And this has just been my big sort of process on how I do things. So really hope you got a lot of value from this. And I'll link a video here or somewhere on this page as well. Also, if you need extra help on how to create more success in your life, we're running a lot of events. I'll leave a comment below so you can check it out. Or if you would like to, I've got a new book coming out. So if you go to Amazon, just type in John Lee Money Unlocked, you go and check that out as well. And it'll give you more insights on some of the things I've done over the last 20 years that allow you to create more success. So I'll leave some links below and check out this video here. If you have any questions, by the way, leave some questions below. I'll look forward to answer any questions that you have. All right, see you soon.